بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في عالم يتسارع فيه التطور العلمي ويزداد فيه التنافس المهني، كان لابد من منصة عربية تجمعنا على هدف واحد: العلم والتميز. نقدم لكم ستايل أربيانو كونفرنس، أكبر مؤتمر عربي أونلاين في طب الأسنان، يجمع أكثر من 100 محاضر من مختلف أنحاء العالم العربي في جميع تخصصات طب الأسنان دون استثناء. مهمتنا واضحة: أن نوحد الخبرات العربية ونقدم محتوى علميا قويا حديثا قائما على أحدث الدراسات والتقنيات ليصل إلى كل طالب وطالبة وكل خريج حديث وكل طبيب يسعى للتطور والارتقاء بمستواه المهني. هذا المؤتمر ليس مجرد محاضرات، بل هو رؤية جديدة للعلم ومنصة تجمع الطموح بالخبرة وتفتح أبواب المستقبل أمام كل من يسعى للتميز. ستايل أربيانو كونفرنس، حيث يلتقي العلم العربي ليصنع مستقبل طب الأسنان.
Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? We have right now professional and restorative dentist, Dr. David Alleman from America. How are you, Dr. David?
I'm great. Good to be with you.
Thank you. And it's an honor for us to be with us in Style Arabiano. And thank you for accepting our invitation. And we hope to introduce a great lecture as we see from you as usual.
You will have a great lecture. Here you go.
Thank you. And first of all, we have 1 minute. We can make some. We have about 5 gifts for 5 dentists. We will
5 gifts. All right. Let's get some gifts.
Okay. So we will have 3 winner from something randomly, like a spinning wheel. And in the last of the lecture, we want from you about Biomimetic or from the lecture, and we will have 2 winners who will be the first answers.
All right, from the lecture. Okay, good.
So I will start share my screen to have a translucency in our
spinning the wheel. All right.
Yeah. So the first winner will be, where our gifts are something we use in Biomimetic, like EverX, like Fibra.
Nice.
So Dr. Yad Zordid, the first one. Congratulations, Dr. Yad. Second one will be Dr. Lana San. Congratulations, Doctor. And the last one from spinning randomly will be, yes, Dr. Dentist. This is this is a nickname dentist, but he's a wonderful man. He is very professional. He mostly answers many questions for the lectures previously. So I think, I don't know his name, but he contacted us in the page. So he went with us many times later. So Dr. David, you can start right now. You can introduce yourself. Sorry.
First I want a question. How many doctors are listening right now? Do you have a number of how many are listening to the broadcast?
Yeah, about 40 right now.
40, okay, great.
Yeah, 40.
40.
Yes. So and when in the 10 minutes in the live, I think the most the maximum peak will be about 100 dentists or 200. So we can start.
Everybody's stuck in traffic, I'm sure, but we will they will give their best answer for the questions. Okay. But let me start the lecture with just saying that I'm very happy to be here. I've been doing this for 30 years, lecturing on biomimetic dentistry. So 30 years is a long time. I'm 74 years old. So, when I was 44 years old, basically I had a lot of questions about dentistry. I had been a dentist for 17 years at that time. And 17 years I had practiced dentistry, but I had failures that bothered me. I had teeth that had recurrent decay. I had teeth that fractured. I had teeth that had sensitivity. I had teeth that were so sensitive that our only solution was to take the pulp out and do a root canal. And then I started to have teeth that were fractured into the root and they had to be extracted. Now, all of these failures, every dentist that's listening to the lecture has had those kind of failures. But if I could teach you a way to eliminate all those failures for the rest of your practice, would you be interested in that? And the answer, the dentists say, is yes. And I've lectured to thousands and thousands of dentists in 21 countries and have trained doctors in 53 countries. And so there are many doctors who are practicing the style of dentistry, the biomimetic approach that I invented, and they have no failures for 10 years or 20 years. Now we have doctors that have over 20 years because it's a system. And if you apply the system, you get the same results every time. Well, the question is it free? And the answer is no, it's not free. Now, 40 dentists here are like, oh, shucks. I mean, one reason I don't put my slides up that can be recorded and used, obviously, we have many lectures that are online. If you look up the Alleman Center, you can find many lectures that we have recorded. But when we record an introductory lecture, we know that it's impossible for a doctor to learn in 1 hour or 2 hours or 3 hours the system so that they will be competent. How do we know that? We've trained thousands of dentists. We know how long it takes to learn this system. And to master this, to learn this system, it takes 3 hours of training, about 21 hours. So in 21 hours, you can learn the system, and then you can start reviewing and learning exactly what to do, how to do it, and why you're doing it. But then to master it, it takes a period of time where you're practicing, and then you have to go through another 21 hours of review to answer all of your questions so that you actually know and have confidence in what you're doing. So you're talking about 40 hours of training, and those 40 hours of training are being done around the world by masters that we've taught, that we've trained, and now they're teaching other dentists. And there's some in Egypt, there's some in right now a big group is developing in South America, in the Philippines, in Lithuania. But these teachers that are teaching the system, it's a system that has been proven by thousands of dentists doing millions of teeth. And so, you know, we would invite anyone who's listening to this lecture, if they want to know more, just DM me. My Instagram handle, probably most of you have found it. And we post cases regularly there. We post cases from doctors that we've trained, and you can learn a lot, but you can't master it. So I just want to put that disclaimer here that you don't try to just get it for free. It's not going to work for you. You're going to have too many mistakes, and then you'll say, oh, well, that biomimetic, that doesn't work. Well, it works if you know what you're doing. And if there's 18 things you have to know, it takes more than an hour to learn. But I'm going to review them. I'm going to give them to you right now. The most important thing that you can do to start your biomimetic dentistry is to buy caries detecting dye. Caries detecting dye is the most important technology that dentistry has ever received. In other words, there are technologies like cone beam x-rays. In the United States, it costs you $100,000. There's technologies like CAD/CAM milling machines. United States would cost you $130,000. I've had those. I can use those technologies, but the only technology I cannot live without is caries detecting dye. And so this is how you use caries detecting dye. You take out the restoration that's failed, and then you put it on. You wait a few seconds, rinse it off. If it stains red, then you need to remove it in the peripheral seal zone only. the peripheral seal zone is defined as 2 millimeters inside the DEJ. And so it will take you several applications to see the red in that 2 millimeters inside the DEJ, and then you remove it. You can remove it with a spoon excavator, you can move it with a slow speed round burr, or you can remove it with a high speed round burr. The round burr that we recommend would be 1.5 millimeters in diameter. And so you reapply the caries detecting dye, and then you remove the red and the pink in that peripheral seal zone. So it'll usually take you about 6 applications in a normally deep decayed area. Now, once you have that peripheral seal zone inside the DEJ, there's no pink and no red. Now you have an area that you can bond at a potential bond strength of 30 to 50 megapascals. So 30 to 50 megapascals is a very important number, because that is the strength that the natural tooth is connected to itself. In other words, if you pull enamel apart in tension, by pulling it apart, it will separate usually around 25, 30 megapascals. If you separate the dentin from the enamel at the DEJ, it's more difficult. It takes about 50 megapascals. And so if you have a restoration that's bonded in all of this peripheral seal area in 30 to 50, then you have something that's like a tooth, because the tooth is connected to itself at that strength. But it's more than just the bond tests that you receive from the manufacturer of bonding systems, because the bonding systems, they create all of their tests on flat surfaces. Flat surface has a C factor of less than 1. You will maximize your bond strength if you test your composite bonded to the tooth on a flat surface. But how many of your preparations are flat? The answer is not very many. You usually have 1 or 2 walls, 3 walls, 4 walls, 5 walls. All of these different shapes of the cavities are called configurations, and cavity configurations are the ratio of bonded to unbonded surfaces. And so you just imagine yourself, you have a cavity, it has a bonded surface. If you bulk filled that cavity, you would have an unbonded surface on the top. Well, the ratio of the bonded on top, 5 surfaces, to the unbonded, the surface here, would be like 4 or 5. It's a very high ratio. If you have a bond ratio of bonded to unbonded surfaces of 4 or 5, you will lose 50 to 80% of your bond strength in the first 2 days of the maturation of the bond. And so the biomimetic approach that I have developed is founded on a concept that I have named the adhesive equation. It was taught to me by my second mentor, Gary Unterbrink. And Gary Unterbrink was the scientific advisor for Ivoclar for a number of years. I met him face-to-face in 1998 and several times in the early 2000s. He was close with my first mentor, Ray Bertolotti. But Ray Bertolotti brought adhesive dentistry to the United States. Another dentist named John Kanka III also brought adhesive dentistry to the East Coast of the United States. Ray Bertolotti was on the West Coast, where I grew up in California. But these concepts of adhesive dentistry, the father of these concepts was Takao Fusuyama. And Takao Fusuyama has written, he's passed away, he's no longer with us, but he wrote 2 books, one in 1980 and one in 1993. But in those books, he had the basics of what a hybrid layer was. It wasn't named until 2 years later by one of the researchers at his same dental school, but that researcher was not a dentist. His name is Nakabayashi, Nobu Nakabayashi, and he also has passed away. He wrote a book with Dave Pashley at the university, at the Medical College of Georgia. And that book, it gave the principles of adhesive dentistry and a great bibliography. And when I bought that in 1998, I had an opportunity to really engage with the science.
طبعا يا دكاترة لو حد عنده أي سؤال في البايوميماتيك عموما يكتب لنا في الكومنتس عشان هرد على الكومنتات إن شاء الله.
So these are the copies of the two books I just referred to. This is Fusiyama's, published in 1993, and this is Pashley and Nakabayashi in 1998. But the important thing that this book had was a bibliography of over 400 references up to that point in 1998, where investigation, scientific investigation, using engineering technology often, but there had to be first theories and then in vitro tests, very few in vivo tests. But as I went through all 400 of those articles, it wasn't that easy in those days because we didn't have internet, we didn't have PDFs, we didn't have anything. We just had paper. So if all you have is paper, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make copies of articles. And paper, you know, I've killed a few hundred trees probably collecting all the paper that's behind me. So what you see here are a collection of 2,000 to 3,000 paper articles. And I've done that over since 1995. And so for 30 years, basically, I've been investigating the science and collecting the science and putting it together so that I can teach that first to myself. That took about 7 years to master. But then once I had it and I had been doing it successfully for 5 years, then I said, gee, this is making dentistry fun again. I don't want to quit dentistry like I did after the first 17 years. So I offered to some of my friends to train them, and I started to teach them in 2003. And then I've been teaching hundreds of dentists every year since then. But if we have first the idea that the most important thing is finding caries in that peripheral seal zone, okay? So now you can do that, you remove that. But then the second thing that I discovered, and this is something that was never taught in dental school. Caries removal is taught in dental school, but not using caries detecting dye. Most dental schools don't, don't make it mandatory. A lot of dental schools have it available, but if I had a dental school, every prep would have caries detecting dye every time. And if there's no caries there because it's a clean fracture, hey, fine. But the only way you can tell if there's no caries is not visually and not tactily. The visual tactile examination can never give you an absolutely reproducible diagnosis that there is no caries left there. Only caries detecting dye can do that. So that's the most valuable technology. It costs about $25 in the United States, not very expensive, but that's the most valuable. Now, that's lesson 1. And so lesson 2, we talk about diagnosing cracks underneath a restoration. Well, cracks underneath a restoration usually have a symptom of pain on biting, cold sensitivity, and sometimes sensitivity to sweet. So you ask your patient, in your mouth, do you have any teeth or any time that you have sensitivity to biting, to cold temperatures, or to sweets? And if they say yes to any of those 3 questions, you have a gap or a crack, and that crack may or may not have decay associated with it. And the 4th thing that we ask is that we look at an x-ray and we see how deep a box is on their radiograph of any restorations they have. And this is critical because if you have a box that's deeper than 4 millimeters, it will be in a part of the tooth that's called root dentin, And the enamel in that area close to the root will be called decussated dentin. And decussated enamel. So the last 2 millimeters, you got the CEJ, and then you got 2 millimeters. This is a very weakly woven together place of enamel. That's where abfractions cause. But also, it's the transition between a higher mineralization in the coronal portion of the tooth and less hydroxyapatite in the root. What does that mean? That means that you will have a reduction of about 20% of your bond potential, because your bond potential of any part of the tooth that you are bonding to is directly related to the amount of hydroxyapatite. So if you look at a tooth, you got enamel on top, the most hydroxyapatite, 95%. Next to the DEJ, you have superficial dentin. That has about 50% hydroxyapatite. And then as you go lower into the tooth, then at this margin of the DEJ, or the bottom of the crown, then the dentin starts to have 20% less hydroxyapatite. So it takes 20% longer for the bond to that portion of the dentin to be established. And so this relationship of how much hydroxyapatite and the rapid or the rate of bondability was discovered by myself from my examination of now 30,000 hours of research on dental anatomy and the adhesive experimentations with materials and techniques. But what eventually evolved from these concepts of C-factor, bond strengths, and depth of a restoration into the tooth was a concept that I developed called the hierarchy of bondability. So there's 5 or 6 levels of bondability in a tooth. If you connect those different layers that have a different amount of hydroxyapatite, then the shrinkage of your composites. All composites shrink at least 1.5%, most more like 2 or 3, some 4%. But all of that shrinkage can produce a gap. And any gap that you have in your restoration means that under function, that gap starts to get longer. It starts with micro movements and it starts to peel. Now, sometimes it takes a couple of years or 3 years or 5 years to peel and reintroduce a highway for reinfection. But every composite that does not use the science of biomimetic dentistry will fail in these 5 years, 10 years. But right now, using the science in the 6 lessons approach that I invented 30 years ago, now we have restorations that are well into their second decade, another 22, 23 years, no debonds, no leakage, no sensitivity. Nobody else has that. Only people that have been doing biomimetic dentistry can claim that, but only a person that has established a practice-based research network. What does that mean? That means dentists pay me money. Is it a lot of money? Well, it's just relative, you know. Everybody in Egypt's rich. I know that, so money's no problem. But the idea is that if you pay for dental school, you're probably going to get something that you can make some money off of. If you pay me to get trained in 6 lessons, you're going to have a competitive advantage, and every other dentist that's not doing what you do, they'll be jealous of you. I get that. But the bottom line is that patients know that all dentists aren't the same. You know, word gets out. Don't go to this dentist, you know. Go to this dentist. Well, even the good dentists have a weakness in their adhesive dentistry if they don't know these concepts of the hierarchy of bondability, C-factor, and then my signature concept, which is decoupling with time. And so now I'm going to teach you.
I have some question regarding to C-factor. Yeah, I want to, from your opinion, how do you deal with high situation while maintaining biomimetic principles with high C-factors?
Yeah. So, you know, how long does it take to teach C-factor? At least 2 hours. And so when we teach our students that are learning from us, the lecture is a 2-hour lecture, but they have to usually repeat it 3 times. So it usually takes about 6 hours to really master these concepts. But once you do, then you start doing things differently. And the main concept that you will do differently is the layering of your composite. And so in the 6 lessons, we teach you what's called a stress-reduced direct composite technique. And the stress-reduced direct composite technique was first published in 2002, and this is the article from Simone Della Peri from Sardinia, Italy. And when I read that in 2002, I said, well, at least there's 2 people in the planet that understand decoupling with time. He didn't call it that, but the idea is that these polymerizations that are so important to establish the strength of your hybrid layer take from 3 to 5 minutes to stop what's called the exponential part of the curve, which they're coming together very quickly in the first minute. And then the second minute, they start to get a little bit slower. But the slowing down of the polymerization of these free radical reactions happens in 3 to 5 minutes. And so that's called a curve. So you have this exponential part of the reaction, and then you have a curve, and then you have a plateau that doesn't really react very much for 24 hours. But in this critical 3 to 5 minutes, Simone Della Peri identified that in that article, and I had identified it also. But my critical number was 5 minutes, and his critical number was 3 minutes. Don't get thicker than 1 millimeter in 3 minutes was his rule. And then when we started teaching together, and we taught together for 10 years around the world, we decided to make the Alleman Della Peri rule. And that is that in the first 5 minutes, after you polymerize your adhesive of your bonding system, so you put the light on the bonding system, and now the polymerization reaction is starting. In that first 5 minutes, you can do 6 things. You don't have to wait for 5 minutes. In fact, you shouldn't wait for 5 minutes. You should polymerize your adhesive, and then these are the 6 things that you should do. First thing you do is you carefully apply 1/2 millimeter of flowable composite on all of the dentin and the DEJ area. That's the first thing. And then you light cure that. That's the second thing. Well, that takes about 90 seconds. So 90 seconds is getting towards 3 minutes. That's good. But then the next thing you do is you place uncured dentin replacement composite. And the one that we like the best is APX, but you can use others. And you'd like to have a composite that has a modulus of elasticity, which is the measurement of the stiffness of someplace between 10, 12 to 18 to 20. And that's the mimicking of the modulus of elasticity of the dentin. Dentin is someplace between 12 and 20 or 18, depending where you measure. But the idea is that the composite is the only material that can really give you that mimicking of dentin. So if you make a ceramic restoration too deep and down into the root area, it's a big mistake, because you have to have something that is flexing and bending on the bottom half of the tooth. It can be stiff on the top, that's fine. Ceramic on the top is just fine. But as you get into the tooth, then you have to have composite. So this uncured composite takes a little bit of time, about 30 seconds to place at a 1 millimeter thickness. And then the fourth thing you do is you place Ribond without any resin on it. So just dry Ribond you just place inside the peripheral seal zone. So remember, the peripheral seal zone is the 2 to 3 millimeters. And that 2 to 3 millimeters is caries free. That's shown by your caries detecting dye. And then once you place the Ribond inside of that area, you wet the Ribond. That's the fifth thing. And then you light cure the Ribond and that 1 millimeter of dentin replacement. And nobody can do those 6 things in less than 5 minutes. So by following that protocol, you guarantee that the hybrid layer, the most important part of your restoration, has had time to mature. And now everything in your restoration is going to be permanently sealed on the dentin. Now, there's one other caveat, and this is the last thing that's more difficult to learn. And so those who are listening, how many do we have on the call right now? Mom Dao? How many are on the call right now?
About in the life? Yes, well, about 50.
50. All right. And so we got 50. Yes. And so listen very carefully.
Yes. So Dr. Hadil has a question. I don't know, something you said before. It's ask which type of X-ray be more safe. Can you explain for us about updates technology for it?
Yeah, we only use bite wing X-rays is all we need. Just that's to measure the box. You don't need anything more than that. The thing that I was going to finish the lecture on was the most difficult thing, and that is crack diagnosis and crack dissection and crack removal. And we've been doing this successfully, but it takes training to understand exactly how to do that. We've posted many cases on my son's Instagram account and myself, but a cone beam X-ray, for example, can help you to find cracks, but finding cracks doesn't help you unless you can treat them. And so we can find cracks just by looking at the width of the isthmus. If it's greater than 2 millimeters, then the tooth is moving in two directions. If a cusp is less than 1 millimeter, it's too dry and will have less ability to absorb tensile stresses. And if you have a crack on a marginal ridge, that's called a peripheral rim fracture. And if you have symptoms with the peripheral rim fracture, you know you have the crack. So you don't need cone beam X-ray to diagnose cracks. But if you have it, that's great. But the most important thing is you make the measurements. And once you have an isthmus wider than 2 millimeters on a tooth that's not bonded, the tooth is moving in two directions instead of moving together. So a natural tooth moves together with all the forces. A tooth that has had their disconnection side to side moves two ways, and that allows for cracks and for redecay to happen.
So, Dr. David, regarding to the cracks, regarding to cracks the dissection, we complete or not completely follow the cracks. We should use CBCT.
No, you don't need it. You just need a bite wing X-ray, because the only thing that you have to make sure is that when you're dissecting a crack, let's say the pulp is here, you don't want to be too angled this way, but the tooth does constrict at the CEJ area. So you want to make sure your burr is not going that way, it's going this way. You have the PDL over here, so you don't want your burr too straight and you don't want it too angled, but it's easy to go halfway down, just 4 or 5 millimeters, and then take a bite wing, and that will show your angulation without a sophisticated X-ray. So that's how we've been doing it for 30 years. All right, so that's the end of our biomimetic lecture right now. Lesson 6 is occlusion, and that's another 2 hours, but there's an easy technique to find non-working interferences called the 3-paper technique. We've posted that on our Instagram, and so you can look more into that, and I hope we've aroused your interest to find. Oh, here's a good question. Is the bond stronger in enamel or dentin? It's the dentin if you control for C-factor stress, the conditioning of the smear layer. In other words, you can't leave smear layer. You have to remove that either with acid on a total etch, but a better way is with air abrasion. And then the other thing you have to control for is the time of your bond maturation. And so the bond to dentin will be twice as strong as the bond to enamel if you learn how to control for those 3 confounding variables. All right, great question. So are we time for the money questions? You ready to do the questions to win a prize?
Okay, no problem. We have only 5 questions from some audience, and I have 2 questions if we have time. We have time for that?
Sure, we do. We're good.
So, yeah, first question is failure in restorative dentistry more often due to material limitation or operator misunderstanding of stress distribution? This is something confusing for me.
Okay, repeat the question one more time.
I mean, is the failure in the restorative dentistry more often due to material limitation or operator misunderstanding for stress distribution?
Yeah, it's a total lack of understanding how to maximize a bond strength. So you have to have the connection on all sides in that 30 to 50 range, and you can't get that without understanding C factor and decoupling with time. So decoupling with time, nobody is teaching that unless they've been trained by me. A lot of people are teaching it now. They've been trained by me and our network of teachers. But the idea is that what I've just given you in this lecture is worth $1 million to a dentist who wants to be successful. But I would invite you to get further training to master it. Okay.
So, Dr. David, yeah, where do you see biomimetic dentistry in the next 10 or 15 years?
Yeah, it's just going to grow and grow and grow because we've never had a biomimetic dentist that said, oh, this is too hard. We've never had a biomimetic dentist that said this doesn't work. We've never had a biomimetic dentist that says this doesn't make my patients happy and the stress in the office less. I mean, if you're seeing 10 dentists or if you're seeing 10 patients a day, then you're stressed out. If you're seeing 20 patients a day, then you're really stressed out. And a stressed dentist makes mistakes. Now, Davey practices full time, my son.
Yeah.
In our office, and he sees 6 patients max every day, and he makes a good living doing that. Seeing more patients is not a blessing to any dentist or any patient. Now, everybody can say, well, I'm going to make more money if I see more patients. Yeah, but at what cost? And so the quality will go down. And every dentist in every of the 53 countries that we've taught in has patients that are looking for better dentistry. They're looking for quality. If you go to Saudi Arabia right now, you're looking for a quality biomimetic restoration. We have a half dozen who are practicing and teaching in Saudi Arabia. How much does it cost for a restoration in Saudi Arabia? $500, the equivalent. Well, you know, United States is going to cost twice that much, but they probably get cheaper gas in Saudi Arabia, I'm guessing.
So we have another question. Dr. Rio, continue question, but the dentine is less hydroxyapatite.
Exactly.
This is
so the hydroxyapatite is 50%, but it's more tough because it is surrounding collagen. So the flexibility that the collagen gives the hydroxyapatite means that it can bend a little bit before it breaks, where enamel bends a little and then it breaks. So the cohesive strength at 30 megapascals for enamel, it's good for compression, it's good for wear, but it's not good for tensile forces. The tensile forces go to the bottom of the tooth. That's where you need flexibility and kind of shock absorbing and shock distribution. And the science is very clear that the bottom half of the tooth is the critical tooth structure. And so the top of the tooth, which is above the hydocontour, that's what we call non-critical tooth structure. You can onlay 1, 2, 3, 4 cusps. You have a lot of flexibility in designing your onlays or your overlays. But below, you need to preserve that, what we call the biorim, which is the bottom 2 to 3 millimeters underneath the hydocontour. That's where the real stress distribution comes into. But good questions.
So regarding to the biomimetic range from 30 or to 50 megapascal, I think that 30 is enough for doctors working under the universal bond is hard to reach the 50 megapascal?
Yep. Yeah, so basically we've had, 1 million restorations placed with these techniques. None of them have debonded. None of them have shown symptoms of leakage. Now, these are in vital teeth. It's very important that the very first goal that we teach in our class is that our main goal is to prevent endo. Now, a lot of teeth and a lot of patients, the pulp's already dead. You know, they haven't gone to the dentist, and an endo is better than an extraction. But the idea of finding the teeth that aren't dead will increase the flexibility and the durability of a tooth by 300%. Once you take the pulp out, the tooth becomes dry, and that dry leads to a 300% increase in their brittleness. So brittleness and toughness are two different engineering terms. A brittle material is good for some things. Enamel is really good for wear. Dentin isn't really good for wear. But the toughness of flexibility, that's the most important part of a tooth, that it's able to bend and flex without cracking or breaking, where restorations have the ability to crack at the margin. And that crack at the margin of the tooth, that allows that reinitiation of infection and a crack propagation that can break teeth.
So do you think that dentistry today is overlaying on material instead of understanding tooth biomechanics?
Yeah, the main problem is ignorance of polymerization dynamics. In other words, the tooth mechanics we understand, but you can't mimic them unless you get a high bond strength in that 30 to 50 megapascal range. And the only way you can do that is by decoupling with time, by negating the C-factor stresses for a certain period of time. And as you apply these ability to make small increments of composite, building your dentin, and that's called the stress-reduced direct technique that Della Perry pioneered in 2002. It's the only way that we would replace dentin. So every time you use incremental composite layering, the increments should be based on a 2 millimeter ball of composite. You just take a 2 millimeter ball of composite, roll it up, measure it, have your assistant measure it. That's what you're going to replace the dentin. If you had a large amount of dentin to replace, you would have a lot of balls of composite. If you have a small amount of dentin to replace, you just use a few of those balls of composite. But by limiting the volume or the bulk that you're placing at any time, it creates this decoupling with time, because it just takes you longer, and that longer, slower dentistry is the key to longevity, to make it last for 20 or 30 years rather than 2 or 3 years.
So why there is a debate on decoupling with time? Yeah, disagreements.
There's a debate because there's ignorance. The people that debate it, people that debate it are ignorant. They don't know. What can I say? If I'm the master of the world, in other words, I understand how this stuff is, and somebody has a question with the master. I mean, I've spent 30,000 hours of my life. My hair is gray now. It used to be black.
Yes.
Why wouldn't they talk to me? I'm available on Instagram every day. They can DM. They're not going to be able to argue with me. Yeah, but they don't understand.
Why? Yes.
Yeah.
I understand.
They haven't done it. They haven't done it. You know, they're jealous. I get that. You know, they wish that they were as smart as me. That's okay. I get it. But it's like, I dug this out of the literature. I dug this 30,000 hours. Nobody gave this to me. I had to get it myself, making copies with copy machines. Now, you know, young guys, they don't want to work that hard. I get it. It's okay.
We can respect you. You are the godfather of Biomimetic. We
there you go. There you go. Can't deny that. Get trained by the best. If you can't get trained by me, get trained by somebody that I've trained, and that's available around the world right now. So we would encourage everybody.
I know this. So
that's right. Get bonded.
We have some questions. Stay bonded. So actually, I have some questions from some.
Okay. Here you go.
The bond. Yeah, you can see the question in the screen.
Yeah, I put the bonding on the cavity, then the composite. I did my finishing, but then I realized that I need more composite. Do I need to put another layer of bond? Yes, you do, but you really need to aerobrade. If the if it's more than 12 hours old. So, you know, you can bond to the next layer of composite up to 12 hours without air abrasion, but after 12 hours, then you need to air abrade if you need to add composite to composite.
So Dr. Tamer asked,
great question. Yeah.
what?
So a biobase is, the definition of biobase is the dentin replacement. So some cavities will have a millimeter of dentin missing. That would be the thickness of the biobase. Some teeth have 8 or 9 millimeters of dentin in an endodontically treated tooth. That would also be considered a biobase. So the thickness of a biobase could be someplace between 0.5 millimeter to 9 millimeters thick, depending on the tooth structure that you're bonding to. What you'd like to do is to have 3 millimeters left for your enamel replacement. So the enamel replacement should be made out of a stiffer material, a stiffer composite than the biobase, or ceramic is very much stiffer than composite. But you'd like to have your onlay thickness at 3 millimeters before you take your impression and make your onlay. So that would give you enough to adjust your occlusion without making it too thin.
Yeah. So Dr. David, what about the degradation? What will happen after we bond with range of 30 megapascal? Does it mean that the failure will be faster?
Does it mean what? That Say it again.
The failure will be faster. Yeah, about the degradation that will
They don't
happen
fail.
after we
Yeah,
bond
we've had no failures. In other words, they're probably going to be permanent, but we've only been doing it for 30 years. So if a person lives longer than 30 years, then it's not permanent until they're dead. So yeah, so permanent restoration is what we expect most of these. But there are a few fractures after 20 years. And those fractures are just from the enamel replacement. And so those are easy repairs. You never have to take out the old restoration. You just add if you have a fracture of some of the enamel, but that usually only happens after 20 years. We've had a few fractures because those materials do fatigue, particularly ceramic. If it's too thin, that will have a greater tendency to debond. Composite onlays, on the other hand, can fracture without debonding, and so we teach all of that in our courses. But my preference for onlays is composite, not ceramic.
Okay, so we have another question. Yeah, Dr. Rayo completed this question and say, okay, the sum that we can say it's less hydroxy but more flex, so the power of bond come from this too.
The strength of the bond. In other words, when you're bonding to dentin and you control for C factor and the smear layer and the time, it becomes that when you're trying to pull it off, then there's a little give. But on enamel, there's no give. So when you pull it off, it actually has a cohesive failure in the enamel at 30 megapascals. And the cohesive strength of 50 is, again, the cohesive strength of sound dentin in these ideal bond situations. And so the bond strength is actually higher, but you have a failure of the dentin or the enamel. And like I say, in a natural tooth, there are times when you can have a failure of a natural tooth. The fracture of a groove, in a cusp, you have stress. When you bite down and you're crunching a lot of things, then you have the ability to stress that enamel and eventually it breaks. And if it goes straight down on a vertical crack, it can go into the pulp, into the root, and be lost. And I've seen that once in my practice and once in my son Davy's practice, virgin teeth that have been broken straight down the root and they were lost, but very, very, very rare. So
yeah, Dr. Rio has a question, but the last one for it, I think it asked for a book suggestion to start in Biomimetic. I think
there's a book. So here would be a good book to start. It's called Composite onlays, composite inlays and onlays. And this is by Stefano Bottacchiari. Stefano Bottacchiari, Bottacchiari. It has about 80% of what you need to have 100% success. So it's a good step forward. It just doesn't have everything that he needs. His last chapter documents cracks that have killed pulps and lost teeth because he doesn't dissect cracks. So he doesn't know what's called lesson 2, but that's okay. 80% is better than 50% or 60%, but you'd like to have your restorations last for decades. You'd like to be permanent. Then we invite you to learn the rest of the story from the 6 Lessons Network.
So Dr. David, also one of the challenging situations in daily practice is managing cracked tooth. Some clinicians prefer immediate cuspal coverage or crowns once a crack is suspected, while other aim
doesn't work. It doesn't work. So if you don't dissect the crack, you're gonna lose pulps. Pulps are gonna die. Teeth are gonna be lost if you don't dissect cracks. People have been trying to hold teeth together mechanically forever, and the people that don't like what I'm saying, they have all kinds of reasons. But the problem is, the patients are the ones who are suffering. My patients don't suffer from cracks that are left because we dissect them. We know how to do it. It takes practice. It takes training. And so the people at dental schools that don't want to think about this because it makes them guilty, right? It's like, it's the 3rd leading cause of tooth loss. Cracks are the 3rd leading cause of tooth loss, and no dental school wants to try to find a way that solves that problem, that removes the pathology. I can't understand that thinking. It's not logical. It's not scientific. In other words, if they have a question about crack dissection, they should ask the world's expert. Who would that be? Well, you're talking to them. I've dissected more cracks than anyone in the world, and I've taught more dentists to dissect more cracks than anyone in the world. And all of a sudden, if you talk to my students and say, yeah, this works, what do you think? You think they're lying because they're getting rich, taking a slow approach to try to remove a pathology like a crack? A crack is filled with bacteria. If nothing else, you would say, I want to get rid of the bacteria. But again, the pulp has the ability to fight off bacteria. My major undergraduate was microbiology. I know how the immune response works. I know how pulps fight bacteria very specifically. And it's a very complex, very sophisticated design. But if you put too many bacteria in, the pulp can't act like skin. It can't act like a bone. It can't act like some area the pulp encloses the connective tissue too much, and we cannot have any swelling. And so that's the problem with, most dental schools are too lazy to try to make dentists that really can do things to a higher level. And I understand in a dental school, how many students were in the class of your dental school in Egypt? How many?
About right now in one class, about 500. That's the average.
In each year? Each year?
Have no, it's not. It's one class only. We have about. You mean the graduated?
Yeah, I mean every year. How many from your school? How many dentists are graduated every year?
About 15,000 students or dentists. 15,000. 15.
In one school?
Yeah, no, it's all school in Egypt.
All
not one
school.
school.
Okay, that's better.
All schools.
But let's just take one school. Let's just take one school. In the school you went to, how many graduated every year in the school that you graduated from?
From 500 to 1,000.
Wow.
500 to 1,000.
Okay, so let's say that 200 of those dentists or 100 of those dentists, they're never going to be able to really have a passion to try to save teeth. They just don't care. Whatever okay. But on the top of the class, there's going to be 20% of every class who are going to be like you. They're going to want to be better. Now, they might make a podcast. They might not. They might study literature. They might not. They might ask experts. There's different ways to try to get better. And obviously, the group that you're putting together, if you can grow this group from 50 to 100 to even more, then that's all great. But eventually, you're going to have to confront the science. And a person that doesn't confront the science, they're going to have a real weak spot, and they're not going to have the results that our network has. In other words, if I have 1,000 dentists who have my cell phone, that I haven't changed the cell phone number in 30 years, same cell phone number, when somebody pays me $10,000 to get trained, they're not buying the lectures really. They have to study the lectures, but they're buying my cell phone number. In other words, if this stuff doesn't work and they've paid $10,000 to learn how to do it, then they can call me up and say, hey, it's not working. And it's always, if there's ever a problem, they did something wrong. And so we can find that usually within 10, 15 minutes. On that particular tooth, why is it still sensitive? On that particular tooth, why did the patient have a problem? I'm trying to be a little bit funny. It's not easy. English is my language. I wish I spoke Arabic, which is God's language. I know that. But Arabic, there's enough Arabic teachers. There's enough Arabic teachers of the 6 lessons that can explain to a higher level in that language. But anybody that criticizes me, that doesn't criticize me to my face, I have no respect for them. In other words, every person that has contributed to my knowledge, if I could have a face-to-face conversation, I got on an airplane and flew to a lecture they were giving, and then got face-to-face and said, do you understand it this way? I did that with
actually, all of us, we are needed from Dr. Mahmoud Gamal and Dr.
Nice,
Ahmad.
yeah.
Yeah, so Dr. Gamal, I think he learned from you.
He's one of the best students we've got. Absolutely. So Dr. Gamal, Mahmoud, he's living his life, and he's lecturing in many countries, and that's how it's spreading. So you stick with him, and if you really want to get it from the master of all masters, then reach out to me, and we'll make you a good deal on training.
Yeah, I learned from him sexual approach for biomimetic in general lecture, and I attend his private course, and yeah,
nice.
We respect him and respect all respect for you and for your academic approach. So we are thankful for you to be today with us in Stellar Piano. And actually, we have last 2 questions.
Okay.
Dr. Tamer asks, do you recommend endocrowns?
No, we don't recommend endocrowns.
So, okay. Dr. Rayo is interested.
If you're interested, I think Rayo needs to get in the mastership. So Rayo needs to spend some money and make me rich and make my wife really happy if he would sign up for the mastership. We started a new group in May.
So yeah, we have some feedback from the lecture. There would be one of lecture by Dr. David, but I am thankful.
All right, so we give away our last 2 prizes. They've got to answer a question, right?
Yes.
Okay, what's the question? The question is, what's the most important technology in biomimetic dentistry?
Okay, we have 5 seconds before answers. Live is faster than our voices for dentists. So, okay, we will take the first correct answer. Okay, yeah, okay. So, okay, I will show the answers in the screen.
Okay.
So
that's it.
First answer.
That's it. He won.
That's it.
Gary's detecting dye. Yep.
So Dr. Bra is the first one that said it. Yeah, and Dr. Ray also. Yeah, Dr.
These guys are smart.
Bushra.
They got it.
Yes, all of them. Yeah,
Mustafa got it. That's good. Omar got it.
yeah.
All right, Ryu. All right, ready for
Yeah,
second
so we
question?
will choose. Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. This is the winner. Yeah, we can go to the second question.
Second question. Okay. What is the strength of the connection of a tooth side to side, front to back, and top to bottom using the 6 lessons approach to biomimetic dentistry, where we're looking for the number, the strength in megapascals? What strength are we looking for in the peripheral seal zone?
Okay. Dr. Tamer also, this is a previous question, but he mentioned
That's the
Arab
previous
region. I don't know.
question. That's the previous question. Yeah.
So yeah, we can write.
That's
now.
it. That's it.
Yeah,
You got it.
we have
Ahmed.
about 10.
Ahmed got it.
Yes, we have
got it.
about 10. Yes, but I will show the first one. It's Dr. Mustafa Magdi. Yeah, I
All
think
right,
Dr. Mustafa Magdi is the
Mustafa.
first.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Yeah, we have a lot of pioneer or something who interested in biomimetic in Egypt. So we are thankful, and it's a great honor for us to be with us today, Dr. David. And thank you for this great lecture. And hope we make another lecture in the future.
Yeah,
And
let's
will
do
be
another one. All right.
okay. So
Till next time. Get bonded,
next
stay
time,
bonded.
stay bonding.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.